There is a big difference between people who have been fat their whole lives and people who gain weight later on.
Tell me more, did you get very far?
It's Tony with Big T Bariatric, and today it is July 7th, 2023. I hope you're having a wonderful day so far. Today I have a special guest with me, my friend Scout from the channel Nightlight.
Hello, everyone.
You often see her on with me when we do live streams, but she was really begging me to make a video because her channel sucks and stuff like that. So,
Not true.
So I thought, okay, yeah, I'll bring her on, and yeah, we'll just talk about some stuff. But in all seriousness, you know, we often like covering the same topic, so it's great to get her on here and talk about, and specifically fat acceptance cringe nonsense that we both cover on both of our channels. So if you want to take a moment and introduce yourself and your channel and where people can find you.
Yeah, my name is Scout. My channel is called Nightlight. If you look it up, you'll find it. There's not a lot named that. I like to talk about fat acceptance. I also get a little more political with my content, and I just share my views on certain kind of politicized issues. So if you want to go check that out, that would be great.
I'll leave a link to her channel down in the description, so go ahead and click on that. Go to her channel and subscribe if you will. I really appreciate it. Help her get to 1,000. She's almost there, guys.
Please.
So today, yeah, please. In particular, we're talking about one fat acceptance person in particular who seems to have this idea that only fat people who've been fat their whole lives understands what it means to be overweight. And so I thought Scout would be the perfect person to chat about with this, because as a fat person who's been fat his entire life, me, I thought that I can present one side of this argument. And as somebody who has not been fat her whole life, but had a brief encounter with being a little larger than normal, I thought she can cover the other end of the spectrum. So, but before we get into that, do you want to share a little bit about your experience with obesity and what it did to you physically?
Yeah, so my whole life I always thought like I was just bigger. Like no one ever told me like from a medical standpoint, like you're unhealthy, you shouldn't be this heavy, you're like overweight. I could feel I was like heavier than I needed to be, but it was kind of always in the back of my mind. So it didn't really get me until I wanted to get with someone and they weren't interested. And, that made me sad. And then it turns out that that person, my best friend, had gotten with him behind my back. So that was just kind of my breaking point. And I was like, you know what? I'm going to show them. And it turned from like, it's like everyone has their like revenge story or whatever. This turned from more like revenge to just my health journey. And so far I've lost like 30 pounds. I was like brushing up on 180 and now I'm down to 140. I'm still going strong. So I'm about like a little halfway towards my goal.
So even as a teenager, you've experienced some sort of complications with being overweight physically. It's taken a toll on your body. And as you just said, even relationally, you've had a difficult time. So what are the things that you experienced on your body as you were getting bigger?
So for me, I think there's a bit of a slight like also like genetic, the shape of my body is a little bit more stocky naturally because I'm Filipino and naturally we're short and stocky. So I never imagined myself being like some skinny goddess, but I definitely could be thinner. But like I was still pretty strong. Like I was on a crew team in Florida. Like that's like one of the most physically demanding sports there is. That was before my heaviest. I would get out of breath kind of. I was starting to get to that point where I couldn't keep up on hikes as well. I hate hikes, but I couldn't keep up as well doing those things, like a lot of cardio stuff. And like physically, like my actual appearance, like the insides of my thighs were like kind of like rubbing against each other, and I hate that. I still have that, not to the extent that I did before, but I'm still working on that. I had a belly, I still do, not a big deal, but, like, yeah, just most of me was, like, pretty heavy looking, and to be short and heavy is difficult,
Mhm.
so and, like, being naturally kind of thicker doesn't help, so, I think just it was kind of uncomfortable for me to, like, just exist. It wasn't painful most of the time, but it was definitely uncomfortable.
Could you have seen if you continued that way for a few more years that, maybe it would have become more dramatic for you, pain-wise, uncomfortable-wise, stuff like that?
Yeah, I would say so because I was still a lot, like, self-conscious about myself, like, sitting down as a fat person is, like, one of the most uncomfortable experiences, like, socially and physically.
Have you ever wondered what it's like to be a fat kid? Well, now you don't need to wonder. It's uncomfortable to sit on a couch and lean back because you're afraid that somebody will see your stomach or your double chin. Not to fear, there's a simple solution to this. Just grab a pillow, hug it tight, and lean forward. It covers your fatness.
Because you just feel like everyone can notice, like, all your individual rules, and as a girl, especially, like, a teenage girl, that's, like, the worst feeling, um, and, like, to have all everyone around me I think it was more mentally, painful than physically, but I bet, if I kept going the way I was, like, just I let myself go in, like, middle school, I was, like, kinda over it, because I just thought it was this is how I naturally was, and so I would still be ballooning right now if I didn't, like, get a grip, and I definitely think it would have become painful physically as well as, like, emotionally.
Was there any moment where you thought, wow, this fat acceptance movement, they make some pretty good points, and I'm struggling as a teenager, middle schooler to lose weight. So maybe, what they're saying is true. Did you kind of get caught up in that?
Uh, I wouldn't say caught up in it, I was definitely influenced by it a little because I never, like, got into it, but I would just, like, casually see, like, "Oh, this girl, like, fat girl online is, like, wearing a bikini, that's so cool, that makes me feel better about myself because she's normalizing that body in that particular way," and, looking back on that now, I'm so glad I didn't really get into it. Uh, I think moreover, it was just me kind of giving up than me accepting myself. I was just, like, kind of done being so worried about myself, and so I wouldn't particularly say it was, like, being positive about my, like, body, it was just I didn't care, and to sometimes see other people celebrating it, like, made me feel better, but it wasn't, like, a huge, impact on me.
So I just wanted to say something. Usually people congratulate me for losing 200 pounds and say, Tony, you're doing a great job and everything else. But what I've been thinking about lately too is that somebody like you who didn't gain a ton of weight, but you decided you were going to change your life. You weren't going to let it get to you before it got too bad. Like you were starting to see some of the consequences of it. And you're like, I'm not going to let that happen. I'm going to change my life right now. And you're actively doing that. So I wanted to congratulate you on doing that.
Thank
I,
you.
a lot of people are going to be like, oh, she lost 30 pounds compared to Big T's 200. It's like, we're not going to compare apples and oranges here. She did what I wish that I had done 20 years ago, which is decide to get my act together and lose the weight before it got to the point that it did. And I lost 20 years of my life because of that. So, people can congratulate that, that's great. It makes me feel good. But you are doing what we often talk about that all these other fat activists should do because they are seeing the consequences of it. And instead of fixing it and taking care of it and getting healthy, they're just kind of, screaming at the sky and railing at the clouds and just like, demanding their rights and everything else. And it's like, you also have a right to get healthy and change the consequences before they get too bad,
Mhm, exactly.
But we're going to go ahead and get into this clip right here. Let's get into it.
Girl, you're beautiful. But I am going to use your video to talk about something very uncomfortable. There is a big fucking difference between people who have been fat their whole lives and people who gain weight later on.
To start this clip, there's somebody who is looking at another clip of somebody who says, you know what, now that I've gained weight, it's much more difficult for people to hold doors open for me. So they're kind of complaining, right? They're starting to see some consequences of their obesity. And this other person's like, hold on a damn minute here. there's a huge difference between somebody who gained a little bit of weight later on versus somebody who was fat their whole lives. And like right off the bat, what kind of thoughts did that bring to your mind?
I definitely agree that there is a difference, and I think that difference is heavily like a mental difference because someone who's like 500, 600 pounds definitely has a mental disorder and or mental issues and like something that could cause them to turn to food as like some sort of comfort and like escape from whatever happened to them. And for that, I have like all the empathy in the world. That's not a nice thing to go through. As someone who like hasn't gotten to that point, I don't think I have a lot I can say about like that experience because I've never experienced it. But I can definitely tell you that there's a difference because for me, I still like mentally I wasn't thinking the way I should have. Like I when I was looking in the mirror, I was like, I'm fine. Like I'm not ugly. That's good. I have friends, but I look a lot different from them, and that mentally weighed on me because that sort of like insecurity is not fun to have, especially when you can't really relate to a lot of other girls around you because they're like 90 pounds.
Yeah, I'm pretty surprised you have friends too.
Nice.
No, just really thinking about it too. Really, you started to see consequences of your obesity. You started, having difficulties in the romance department. I mean, you're still pretty young, so you weren't taking it too serious, but you took it serious enough that you decided you were going to change. It's like, okay, two different fat people might have two different experiences romantically or with friends or things like that. Of course, everybody's experiences can be different, but I also don't think that it's going to be too much of a difference, right? Like you're still going to share the same consequences that I will. Mine will be bigger if I get bigger. I'll have more consequences to that. But if we were both the same size but I had been overweight my whole life and
Yeah.
you haven't been, like, you're still going to suffer the same consequences I am. I just might have been suffering them for a longer period of time, right? Like,
Yeah. I would like to maybe think of it as like to make it more simple. Our paths didn't start the same way, but they will end the same way.
Also, there's a very big difference between people who are fat with money, access to money, and people who aren't, and how we are treated, but we're not going to talk about that today.
All right, so she said we're not going to talk about that today, but I thought we would kind of cover it really briefly. Do you think there's a huge difference between fat people who have access to money and don't?
Yeah, I can see like I guess the difference being the money. Because when you have money, you can afford time and to like sit down, be lazy, eat your Uber Eats or whatever it is. I think you have a lot more opportunities to just stay the way you are. Whereas lower income people, there we go. They tend to like be working a lot. They eat when they can. They might not know where their next meal comes from, so they just like eat as much as possible. And for me, I think that is a lot more mentally impacting than someone who has money, because someone who has money feels stable um most of the time, or like more stable at least, and they have like more control over their lives, whereas someone who like doesn't have that might not feel like they have the time, energy, or like money to invest in taking care of themselves, especially if they're like taking care of kids or their family. So they might not have as big of an opportunity to lose that weight. And whereas someone who has money and time might be able to.
Yeah, from my own personal experience, most of my weight gain happened when I had money. Because, like you said, I could afford to eat out. I could afford to DoorDash. I could afford to do all those things. That's when I struggle the most. And I was able to get weight loss surgery when I was probably at one of my poorest, when I was really struggling with money and I couldn't find a job because I was so big. And really, I got by the grace of God and people helping me out. I was still able to lose weight and get surgery because, of course, I was on Medicaid at the time. And so it's like usually when they say that there's a huge difference between the the rich and the poor when it comes to obesity. I can see how you can get bigger and bigger because you have to eat the garbage food, the processed food that's really, really cheap. But there is help out there. If you think you're too poor to get help, that you can't lose weight because you're stuck eating garbage food, maybe there is ways to get help. You know, they do offer like therapy and counseling for free in a lot of places, for those who are disadvantaged and unable to get it. So, you know, your weight might not be a poor issue. It might be a mental issue that you just haven't been able to work out yet. So it might be worth it to find a program to see if you can get free health insurance, to see if you can get help getting into a bariatric program and maybe therapy to help you work out what it is that you're struggling with. So
Today we're just going to address the difference between people who've been fat their entire lives and people who usually gained weight after high school or gained weight after getting with a partner, which is normal. I'm not discriminating. Love yourself. But I notice a lot of people like this tend to have sometimes fat phobic views, which is problem number one. And us who have been fat our whole lives tend to literally hardly ever be fat phobic.
do you know anybody more fat phobic than me?
Me.
Probably. Do you think the fact that you haven't been overweight nearly as long as maybe a fat acceptance person has might have something to do with the fact that you weren't going to play into those ideas that you can't lose weight or anything else like that? You always knew that you could do it if you wanted to take control, right? So you didn't really buy into it because you didn't really experience it. You know, you could be smaller if you wanted to be, or am I wrong?
Well, for me, I don't know if I knew I could. I just didn't really try. I was still like kind of active. Like I did crew, because that was like during the time I was in middle school when I let myself go. So I guess my body was never really, or like my health was never really something that was on my mind. I would just be very conscious of my body, not necessarily my health, because I didn't understand that very well. My parents are both very active, and they would try to get me to do stuff, and they wouldn't really tell me why. Like they would just tell me to. So I think it would have been more helpful if I was like a little more educated on the importance of health. But honestly, at that age, I don't think you should be worrying kids too much about that. Like I wasn't like on death's door. Like if you're like a morbidly obese kid, that's different from just being like 10 pounds, 20 pounds overweight. So it's good to teach your kids health like values, but I also don't think pushing it on them is gonna be very helpful because it just pushed me away from wanting to be healthy. Because it's like, oh, I'm forced to like be uncomfortable and like exercise and eat healthy, or I don't want to do that. So there's like there's a certain balance you should try to make with that.
To her point, I can kind of see how people who have not been overweight their whole lives might be more what they would consider fat phobic because it's not something you've experienced your whole life. You got with a partner and so you kind of let yourself go, or you got into college and you got that freshman 15, which I asked on my channel before, you know, how many people had that freshman 15, and they're like, it's very, very real. So that's something to watch out for when you go into college. But when we're talking about hundreds of pounds, that's something else completely. That's people who are just dead set into believing that there's just nothing they can do to change their outcome. It's because they've been fat their whole lives. And the reason why I do the channel that I do now, and I do have a lot of people that say, Tony, you're fat. Why do you talk about fat people that way? Why are you making fat jokes? And I'm like, I have a self-depreciating sense of humor, so I make fun of myself. I make fun of other fat people. I mean, it's just, I make fun of myself more than I do anybody else, right?
Nope, that's not true. You make fun of me way more than yourself.
I don't make fun of you. What are you talking about?
Sure.
But it's like, having been where I've been, it gives me a position of authority when I speak on these issues because I have been there. And I can tell people you can lose weight. You can do it. You can get in the right program. You can, you know, get therapy. You have access to resources, where all these other people are like, no, there are no access to resources. No, there's nothing I can do to change my weight. There's nothing I can do to change my life. And that's completely wrong.
Because we've lived it forever. Especially when you're a fat child, you are treated so inhuman. I cannot explain the trauma of being a fat child. You are treated from the time, just literally like you're inhuman by your classmates, by doctors, by family. There's no research into it. So I cannot explain, besides on a personal level, how much trauma and dehumanization comes from that.
I don't know if you've experienced anything other than getting turned down by someone. Did you experience any kind of trauma as a result of being overweight, or was your life pretty normal, or with the exception of a couple things here and there?
Well, first I just want to say, she's talking from her own experience, as she said, but then she's making it sound like this is every kid's experience. And for me, I think that's a bit kind of sketch because you can say that it's your own experience and that's valid, but that's not every kid's experience. Because for me, I'm not traumatized by the fact that I was overweight. Like I don't have trauma really. Like I had a pretty normal childhood. Um, and it's just not something that really haunts me. I just know that that's a part of my life and I accept that and I moved on and I'm making changes and that's what's important to me. I think saying that you were treated inhumanely is a bit of an exaggeration, even if it's your own experience. Not to invalidate your experience, but I just don't think a classmate's going to treat me inhumanely because I'm like a little bit overweight.
Yeah, I mean, I think what she's saying is pretty insane because it's like I've been through trauma. Trauma is the reason why I became overweight in the begin with because I was coping, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so going through actual trauma and then the response that happened because I was big is not the same feeling at all. Yeah, people made fun of me. Yeah, girls didn't date me. Yeah, doctors wanted me to lose weight. Parents, family members wanted me to lose weight. That's not traumatic. That's people caring for me and realizing that if I didn't change, that my life would turn out exactly how it turned out. I'd keep getting bigger and I would eventually hurt myself, right?
Mm-hmm.
And wanting people to change does not mean that they are abusing you or that you're going through trauma because it's even dehumanizing it. And I really hate bringing that word into the conversation, but they keep bringing it up saying, oh, you are dehumanized because they think that you're not a human being because you're overweight. And it's like, no, they're appealing to your humanity. They want you to live. They want you to have a good life.
Mm-hmm.
And they know the consequences of what's going to happen if you don't change. So that's why they keep bringing it up. They're not dehumanizing you. They are humanizing you very much.
I have a huge problem when people say that like doctors will like not help you out and like try to scare you away from them and like every doctor's evil because you're fat and they don't like that. I think that's a huge problem for me because I was fat. The doctor never said a thing about that. And I think that's almost worse than them like actually saying something about it because that allowed me to continue to keep growing and I thought I was fine and healthy and they didn't say anything. Like I've been to multiple like different kinds of doctors, never said anything. And I think saying nothing is worse than saying anything.
Yeah, don't they take an oath to do no harm to people, right? I mean,
I don't know. Like I guess I honestly couldn't tell you why they wouldn't like talk to me about that, especially at my age now, where I'm like obviously old enough to understand. I don't know if it was like they were pressured to like not talk about it because of these issues. I think that'd be silly if it was, but it just never came up. And I don't know, maybe because my weight wasn't like impacting my health yet, they didn't think it was necessary to tell me. But like, I'd rather know that I'm like on the brink of like being obese or like already obese than just living my life, you know?
yeah, I really think a doctor who is going to be professional and is going to be someone who is well trained is going to warn somebody about their obesity.
Mm-hmm.
Like that's not dehumanizing you. That's saying, listen, there's going to be some real problems if you don't change.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I was pre-diabetic when I was a teenager because of my weight. There are teenagers now and even little kids who get adult onset diabetes. Like they are seeing this happen. And so for them to just completely act like the doctors are just committing all this medical bias and dehumanizing people because they try to warn them about their obesity is just ridiculous. You want them to not say anything about it? You want them to just let you be fat and not say anything? And then guess what? Your family's going to sue them probably for not saying anything to you.
Yeah.
It's just stupid.
Up until probably recently, and I'm now 26, it's the first time in my life I feel like a human being. And what I mean by that is before I conceptually understood that I was a monster, that I was a disgust to the general public, that I was bad, evil. Like, these are all facts that I lived with in my head. These are facts that I thought were true. So when I see things like, oh, people don't hold doors open for me, this video just shows that thin privilege and pretty privilege are a thing.
So what do you think about that?
I think that's A, sad, and B, ridiculous, because you can have all that in your own head. Like, I'm not gonna say you didn't feel those things because I wasn't in your head. I don't know you. I'm not you. So if that's how you truly felt, I'm sorry that you went through that. That's sad. But society, I don't feel like is entirely responsible for that, because at least for me, like, society as I see it, it's not saying like you're a monster if you're fat. I think girls definitely have like ridiculous beauty standards, but also we've got plus size models, and this person definitely, at least for the most part, grew up with plus size models. Being 26, maybe not like in the early stages of her life, but like as she was growing older, you have more and more representation and like people saying it's fine. So to say that like it's all society's fault, society is perpetuating this now. So you can't make that excuse. Yeah, if someone doesn't hold open the door for you, I don't think that's them being fat phobic or like that means pretty privilege and thin privilege exists, because people don't always hold the door open for me, and a lot of people some people on my channel said they followed me because they thought I was pretty, which thank you. But like I'm not like
right.
I'm not like a model. I think I'm like more conventionally attractive, I guess, but I don't pay attention to that a lot of the time. I've never felt privileged because of that. I just think if you sexualize yourself and if you put in effort to your appearance, fat or not, you will find someone. And there's countless examples of that. Like Tess Holliday's married, has kids, and she's like the most obese model there is. And she's a supermodel. So you can find success and relationships and be like a huge person. It just depends on how you choose to present yourself. And from that video I saw, this person's not really putting a lot of effort into their outward appearance. So therefore, sadly, not a lot of people will be attracted to someone who doesn't put any effort. You'll find someone like dudes, or most of the time, will like go for anything. I don't know what this person prefers,
walks,
but yeah, I'm just saying. You'll find someone, but you are what you attract. If you want someone of higher value, then I don't know, portray yourself as someone who has higher value. Take care of yourself. And if you choose not to, then that is not the society's fault. That's your problem to deal with. And you can make those changes. I don't guarantee you'll get anything out of it, but there's like a 95% chance you will. Mm-hmm.
Like you can pretend to be happy. Like I always was a happy-go-lucky person, even at my biggest. Like I was always happy. I was always kind and loving and always enjoyed life and everything else. But there was this deep sadness within me because of all the trauma that I faced. And it wasn't until I was able to get that under control and lost, the 200 pounds that I did that I realized just how miserable I was. Me being that miserable kept me fat and helped me get bigger and bigger because I was eating my feelings. And as long as I had food to push down the negative feelings, I could always say I was happy because I always had food.
Yeah.
And so, I really do believe a lot of these fat activists who say that they're happy are lying to themselves, and they're lying to the world, because in reality, they're not happy. And the fact that they're overweight proves that, because it shows that there's an imbalance in their lives that they haven't taken care of yet.
Yeah, for sure. Like as I said before, you can't balloon up to being like 400, 500 pounds without sort of some mental, maybe not even disorder, but there is something not connected up there. And because it is not a natural human state to be that size. And people will try to push that it's normalized, like it's normal to be this weight. The like national average like is like 50% or 65% obese or whatever, so it's normal. Just because something is abundant or the majority does not make it normal or should be normal, because you could say the same thing about Nazi Germany. You've got a whole society, maybe not a whole society, but a whole people being attacked and oppressed, and it's a horrible story that happened, but it was normalized, or at least forced to be normalized. And I think there's a lot of parallels that you could say about today's society too. But just because it was normalized did not make it okay. Just because more than 50% of the people who were a part of that maybe agreed with those ideas doesn't mean it's right. So I'm not trying to compare like the fat acceptance movement to fascism, because that's not the same, but you can compare like kind of the fundamentals of like how this works. And it's disturbing to me because I can see similarities in that thought process. And to normalize something that is not good is not making it normal. It's making, I think, it just being widely accepted, but it's still not a normal state of being or a healthy state of being.
I have almost never had anyone hold a door open for me in my life. Most people won't even look me in the eyes. And I actually used to be bigger than what I am now. So I actually kind of get both sides, because I do get treated better now that I've lost 150 pounds. Funny thing is, that's due to Crohn's disease. So it's not even like I'm healthy. I was healthier before. Now I'm more unhealthy, but people cheer me on. So please, like, stitch this, or if you've been fat your whole life, please leave a comment. Please talk about this, because there's no studies. There's nothing. And I know for a fact that it fucked with all of us that grew up fat. Male, female, they, them, it doesn't fucking matter. It fucked with us. And I'm tired of the story. Only story being heard is, no offense, people like this that gained weight later in life, which usually means they always have a confidence that most of us other fat people don't.
That was a lot of projection, I'll tell you that. And I can tell you for a fact that she's lying right there. People have held open doors for her. People have looked her in the eye. She's just doing this perpetual victimization thing. It's good that she lost weight. Doesn't mean she's unhealthy for doing that. Because she's heavier than me and she's losing weight. So what does that mean? If it's unhealthy for her to do that, what does that make me?
Everything she said there, like you said, was absolute projection, that people don't even look her in the eyes. And I really think that's how she lived her life, being miserable, thinking that, oh, nobody's even looking at me. Nobody's paying attention to me. Nobody cares about me. It's like, I never had issues making friends with people, even being bigger. I might not have had a girlfriend, but outside of that, it's like people treated me fairly normally. I didn't have a difficult time finding a job until I ballooned up. Even now, being 470 pounds, I was able to find a full-time job. So people were willing to hire me at a larger weight, just not at jobs that would require me to be on my feet 8 hours a day. So I don't see where my entire life was completely destroyed by everybody else.
I would kind of agree and disagree with what she said about being treated better once she lost some weight, because to me, if someone rejects you, that's not mistreating you. And I never really caught a lot of guys' attention when I was like higher in weight. I still like talked to some guys, but like it never went anywhere. That's not hateful. That's just literally probably an evolutionary thing where you're probably not attracted to something that's like not healthy, or like doesn't seem like it'll live forever or like last long or whatever is hardwired in your brain. I think that's a natural thing. And it's not society, it's just natural. Like I wouldn't want to date a morbidly obese dude for like aesthetic reasons, and also I'm not going to put up with all the health conditions, you know. That's my preference. But once I started losing weight, a lot more guys like found interest in me, and then I ended up like finding someone who would actually date me. So I think it does make a difference in a social way once you lose weight, but I won't say that like I was mistreated. Like people were like attacking me, and sure, you can get made fun of, but like that's not hate. Like that doesn't mean everyone
Everybody gets
around you
made fun
hates you.
of, you know, it
Yeah.
doesn't matter what size you are, you get teased. I mean, maybe your nose is a little longer or whatever. Maybe it's your hair color, you know. It's
Hmm.
I know plenty of red-haired people who get teased mercilessly because they have red hair. Or I made fun of my one of my friends at work because she's blonde. You know, it's
Hmm.
everybody gets teased.
It's just part of life, and if you can't handle it, you're gonna be real miserable your whole life.
Which they pretty much are. But yeah, just absolute projection. I think she's just kind of playing up that victim card, like you said. Just my whole life was terrible, and I saw myself as a monster because I couldn't get everything that I wanted, and you know all the consequences of my fatness are here before me, and so it's really society's fault that all those consequences existed, and so it's they have to change. I don't have to change. They do
Hmm.
because they're the problem. Even though if she did lose weight, a lot of those consequences would go away. She wouldn't have the same issues. I
Exactly,
think,
it worked for me.
yeah,
I got
exactly.
someone.
Yeah, you wanted to be in a relationship with somebody you wanted to be more attractive to guys so that you can date somebody, so you did it, right? And then you found somebody.
Yeah.
That's kind of the same journey I'm on, right? And I just got to say to your boyfriend, poor guy, but at the same time it's like, he likes you for you. And that's really great. I mean, you and I talk about your relationship here and there, but it's a good situation that you're in. Anyways, that's our video for today, and thank you for joining me today, Scout.
Yeah, of course.
Again, if you want to go to her channel, the link to her channel is down in my description. Be sure to subscribe to her, like her videos, and help her get to 1,000 subs. And I'm definitely will have you on again, and I'm sure you'll have me on your channel here soon. So yeah, just keep an eye out for my friend Scout. All right. Thank you very much. Have a great rest of your day.
Bye, everyone.